Hello chess friends and welcome to Zero of Chess channel, and welcome to a very special game that I've prepared for you today. It's a great game played by the new Stockfish version, by the new Stockfish 14 engine, and against another top engine Ethereal. And today's specialty is the King's Indian. So we have seen recently some great games played by Stockfish 14 in the Evans Gambit, King's Gambit, Danish Gambit, but these openings I think still you should try to avoid because they are really sharp. You have to play really some great tactical battles. Today we're playing I think a more common opening. I think we'll see now great gameplay by Stockfish in the King's Indian, and the King's Indian is still sort of an opening that is played in top grandmaster level, maybe not so often anymore, but in the continuation of our Stockfish 14 series we'll see also some great games played by Stockfish in the Queen's Gambit, Decline, the Rui Lopez, Slav Defense, really the most often and popular openings played in top grandmaster level. So let's check out now how Stockfish 14 handled the King's Gambit, the King's Indian. So here d4 played by Stockfish, we have knight to f6 by Ethereal, knight to f3, g6, c4, this is normal stuff of course, bishop to g7, knight to c3, castling, e4, and now after move d6 we have now the King's Indian on the board. We have now bishop to e2, this is the normal, the orthodox variation. After move e5, what white always is trying to do here is delaying the situation a little bit in the center, play simply castling, and now comes this provocative move, knight to c6, challenging now white center. So most of the times white is playing the move d5, and after move knight to e7 we have now reached really this orthodox variation of the King's Indian defense. In my opinion, really one of the best ways to beat the King's Indian is to go into this Bayonet Attack, which Stockfish did with the move b4, because what we can notice is always after the move d5 that the pawn structure is blocked, which means now these pawns are basically showing us the direction of the attack. So white is trying the attack on the queen side, black is trying the attack of course on the king side. So that are the directions that you should search, that are simply the directions that you should attack. What white's main idea is of course to play the move c5, because black has here this powerful pawn chain with c7, d6, e5. So that's why the best way to break a pawn chain is in the center of the pawn chain. So that's why you should try and attack simply around the square d6. So that's why after move b4 here Ethereal blocks a little bit of white's progress on the queen side with the move a5, which is also normal idea. Of course you would love to play very early here this move f5. We have said that black is trying the attack on the king side, but you have to be careful. Sometimes you have to block also your opponent's progress. So that's why this move a5 is very important in order to block at least for a while. I think white will always find a way to break the position on the queen side, but at least you can stop him for a while, at least for a couple more moves. So after move a5, Stockfish accepts the challenge, plays simply b takes a5, rook to a5, and now a4, simply continues the pressure on the queen side. And you see now how chess can be really cruel, because as we said, you want to block your opponent's progress, but you want to be also fast on your attack. And sometimes we make a bad decision, because now if you play too passively here, if you play b6 for instance, in order to block the potential progress with the move c5, that would be simply too passive, because I think from this point on black is simply strategically lost, because here knight to d2 can be played immediately. Now this move knight to h5, which black would love to play, is not working. This wasn't played in the game, but I wanted to show you how one passive move can cause you many problems in the continuation of the game. Now after move knight to d2, okay, black could play maybe knight to d7 in order to block further the potential c5 move, but now after move knight to b3, here rook to a8 has to be played to retreat. Here now a5 is also a great opportunity to break the position immediately, and you see now white is simply much faster when it comes to attack the side where we have the advantage, which is of course the queen side. White is much faster. White made huge progress here. Black didn't even play so far the f5 move. So here after move a5, you could try maybe f5, but it's a little bit too slow. f3, now you can take, but you don't have to even react here. You can play c5 immediately and break the pawn chain. As we said, after move knight to c5, we have knight takes c5, d takes c5, and after bishop to e3, I think for instance that black is simply strategically lost. I think Stockfish would win this game for sure. This pawn cannot be protected anymore. We can of course continue the pressure with knight to a4. This is then a long-term weakness. The a5 pawn, also the c7 pawn is simply here strategically lost for black. So as I said, that's why after move a4 you have to be fast also on your side. That's why Ethereal played here the move knight to h5. I'm telling you this, I'm sorry if I'm telling you too much theory here, but I wanted to show you how you can really be lost in a couple of moves if you don't play this bayonet attack correctly from black's perspective. So after move knight to h5 we have now rook to e1. This is a very important move because you are after move f5, but what black could do maybe here is the move knight to f4. Then you want to have this square in order to escape from this attack of the knight, because taking out the knight wouldn't be a great idea here, because you're liberating here simply the long diagonal for the bishop. And I think from this point on black has solved all of the positional problems, and black has also a very powerful control of the e5 square. So that's why I think it's a comfortable game here for black. So that's why this move rook to e1 is the very important move in order to get your bishop here, in order to have some breathing spaces for the bishop. So after move rook to e1, Ethereal didn't play the move knight to f4, played simply f5, simply makes here progress on the king side. Here Stockfish simply takes, e takes f5. If you play here now, instead of this move e takes f5, knight to g5, in order to play this common bayonet attack move, it's this move knight to e6. It's not so good because black can still control the square. E6 with the move knight to f4, it comes of course with an attack against the bishop, and still this bishop and the knight are protecting the e6. So far this idea is not working for white, although it's a very often popular move in bayonet attack games, but so far it's not working. So that's why after move f5, Stockfish 14 simply played e takes f5, and now comes knight to f5. Be prepared, don't be here greedy, don't play the move g4. Sometimes you can get this trap, because if you play g4 it's actually not so good here for white. It seems that white is winning a piece, but now this is the great continuation for black. Black can play a counter attack, and if you take now for instance this knight on h5, then we can play knight takes e2, and if you play with the knight then you lose of course the rook. If you play with the queen, if you play queen to e2, then you get simply pinned by the bishop, and in the next move you lose again your knight. The knight is pinned here by the bishop, and in the continuation of the game I think black is simply winning. So let's go back here in this continuation after move g4 and knight to d4. If you play now knight takes d4, it's not even better, because you get simply e takes d4. It comes also with an attack against the knight. You could maybe try here even to take what we can also take here, d takes c3. In the continuation of the game black will play also queen to h4, which would be very dangerous. So again I think black is much better. So that's really wild. Be careful after move e takes f5 and knight to f5. Don't play the move g4. It's a tempting move, but you see you can be really tactical lost here from white perspective. So really tactics all over board already in an early stage of the game. So these are the tiny little tricks in the bayonet attack. So after move knight to f5, here Stockfish played bishop to g5, attacking the queen to d7. If you get the queen on e7 or an e8, of course the queen gets here simply on the e file where already the rook is. So there could be maybe some tactical possibilities for white to open somehow the e file. So that's why queen to d7. We have now rook to a3, because the serious threat was of course e4, liberating here the long diagonal for the bishop. Then the e4 comes with an attack against the knight on f3, but also against the knight on c3. So that's why rook to a3 also very often popular move, even in different sidelines in the bayonet attack from a white perspective. So after move rook to a3, we have a rook to a8 played by Ethereal. We have now bishop to c1. Here we have knight to f6, and now h3, preventing also some knight to g4 ideas. This is I think very important. And even if you play here something like instead of this after move h3, here b6 was played by Ethereal. Even if you play something like e4, it's not so good. You get always this one knight to g4, so you cannot really create anything with your e pawn. I think that's something that you should always recognize. You would love to play this move e4 in order to liberate your long diagonal for the bishop, but so far it's not possible. This is simply a lost game again for black. You could maybe try a tricky move like e3, but white doesn't have to even react. White can play a normal idea f4, and in a couple of moves I think there is a great way for white to simply take out the pawn. So still I'm pointing out also the e6 also always a long-term weakness in Bayonet Attack game. So that's why after move a3 here b6, finally Ethereal blocked out the position on the queen side, but now bishop to d3 here played by Stockfish. Stockfish is now controlling the e4 square even further, so that's I think also a very pragmatic idea in King's Indian structures. You should always try to occupy the square e4, because if black liberates the long diagonal for the dark square bishop, then you could face very some problems in the continuation of the game here from white perspective. So after move bishop to d3, we have queen to d8, knight to b5, here knight to e8 played by Ethereal, and now comes this move knight to g5. This is very annoying. This pawn, this e6 is, as I said, a long-term weakness. Even if you try here bishop to f6, okay, maybe now would be very risky here to play the move knight to e6 immediately, but now after bishop to e6, f takes e6, maybe black can find a great way to play sort of a blockade idea with the move knight to e7 or bishop to e7. But white doesn't have to play the game like this. White can play again this normal idea, knight to e4, and look at this progress. I don't think that black gained so much in the continuation of the game. We can play normal development, bishop to d2 or bishop to b2. We're preventing always this jump of the knight on d4, so we're controlling simply the d4 square, and I don't think that black has so many great opportunities here. So in the continuation of the game, I think we can even play g4 as a long-term tactic, maybe f4, now finally opening the position, because the bishop, although now has maybe some kind of a diagonal here, but it's actually not attacking anything now in the continuation of the game. So I think the activity of white pieces is simply much better. So after move knight to g5, here the continuation of the game, queen to e7 played by Ethereal. Ethereal prevents this move knight to e6, but of course gets again on the same file where already the rook is. That's why Stockfish uses now the moment immediately, play simply f4. We have bishop to d7, and now bishop to e4. We have rook to c8. Even if you play something like h6 here, it's again not so good, because now actually it is a possibility to play the move knight to e6, because after bishop to e6 we have here now d takes e6, but of course here it comes now with a direct threat against the rook. You cannot take also the pawn in long terms, of course, because there is also the risk of bishop to d5 to lose the queen, so you would be forced to play something like, I don't know, rook to d8, but now knight to a7 and knight to c6 is simply, I think, winning the game. So there is no good way here for you also, as we said, to take out the pawn on e6. So really wild stuff. With the likes for weaknesses that you always get in this Bayonet Attack is sometimes really too much to handle. So as I said, after move bishop to e4, here rook to c8 played by Ethereal, and now rook to d3 here played by Stockfish. We have now king to h8, getting out of this potential light square mess that we have talked about, and now a great move played by Stockfish, knight to a7 against creating this very annoying attack against the rook. We have rook to a8, and now knight to c6, a great move here by Stockfish, because if you take bishop to c6, it seems like a natural idea to also a little bit stop the progress, because white will have this double pawns, but actually it's not about double pawns anymore. It's simply about piece activity, because Stockfish can play, of course, here d takes c6. This wasn't played in the game, but I wanted to show you also this continuation. You could maybe try here knight to f6 to get your knight into the game, but now bishop to f5, here g takes f5. Now we can open also the e file. We can play f takes e5. We have d takes e5, but look at this now, bishop to a3 is happening. The connection between white pieces is simply great. Black is again tactically lost in the continuation. You lose the rook. So really brilliant stuff. Great positional and tactical preparations here by Stockfish 14. After move knight to c6, here queen to f6 was played, and again here Stockfish simply takes out this pawn. We have pardon me, this knight, bishop to f5. Again, if you try now bishop to f5, this wasn't played in the game, but it's again not so good, because you get rook to f3. Here you can try maybe the move h6, but now first we take f takes e5. You can play d takes e5, but now knight to e6 is happening. Again, you cannot take with the bishop because of the pin by the rook against the queen. So even if you, let's go back, even if you try here something like e4, again it's not so good. We can simply take out, although you're liberating a little bit your pieces, but it's simply not working. So after a move here bishop to f5, Ethereal didn't take here the bishop took here Ethereal took the knight on c6, but it's a similar position that we have already talked about. We have now bishop to g4, the bishop is still hanging. Now we have bishop to a4, but now queen to e2. Okay, white lost the pawn now meanwhile, but it's not such a huge problem because the activity again of white's pieces is simply too much to handle. We're targeting again simply the e6 square. Here if you try e takes f4, this wasn't played in the game. It's again not so good. Knight to e6 is happening for sure. You can maybe try here rook to f7, but now we can first take here, maybe knight takes g7, knight takes g7, and now after bishop to b2, this bishop is simply the best piece on the board. Again, I think black is tactically and strategically lost. So really beautiful dynamics in the continuation of the game here. This wasn't played in the game, as I said. After move queen to e2, e takes f4 is not working, so that's why queen to e7 here played by Ethereal, but now Stockfish simply occupies this weak square. Knight to e6, we have rook to f7, now knight takes g7, a similar position is happening. Knight takes g7, f takes e5, d takes e5, but now bishop to a3. Again, the great connection between the bishop and the rook. The queen has to now retreat, queen to h4, and Stockfish simply takes. This pawn is taken, and now what we want to do is of course just only here create a queen and bishop battery on this long diagonal, and it would be game over. So now in the continuation, Ethereal tries to simplify the game by trading off more pieces, which is of course a natural idea, but Stockfish simply continues the pressure. Bishop to b2, we have bishop to g4, h takes g4, king to g8, getting at least with the king out of this tactical mess on the long diagonal. Here rook to f3, great move by Stockfish, great deflection motif. If the rook takes, then you get checkmate on g7. Here rook to d7, and here maybe you can pause the video and try to see now the best next move. After that move, Ethereal actually resigned. It's not a move that's winning immediately, but it's a great opening move, and black is really helpless. So try to see now the best continuation. I hope you can find it. Okay, the best move here for white is, and after that move Ethereal immediately resigned, is the move d6, because d6 is of course a great double attack sort of. If you play rook to d6, then you get checkmated on g7. If you don't, if you take with the pawn, then you get queen to d5, and you get here a great fork by the queen. The rook will be trapped in a couple of moves. So you could maybe try here to move c6, but now rook to f1 I think is a great opportunity. Maybe rook to e8 can be played, but look at this, this is not working also, because you get rook to e8, knight to e8, rook to f8. So these are also some great tactical opportunities. I think in this particular position you would be forced to get your queen back into the game, but now we can play here something like c5 is I think also a great opportunity, because now you can maybe take b takes c5, queen to c5. You cannot take here also the pawn on d6, because you get something like rook to f7. So as I said, whatever black does in this particular position, it's simply game over for black. White will always find a great way to attack this position, because especially because of this very long diagonal by the dark square bishop. So great game played by Stockfish 14. You see this Bayonet Attack, it's really, as I said, one of the best ways if you want to be the King's Indian, in my opinion. All of the strategic elements we have seen now by Stockfish 14, this opening f-file ideas, b4 attacks immediately, occupying the e6. You see, I think we can make sort of an inaccuracy when we attack the e6 too early. We have seen also in a couple of examples, if you try this knight to g5, knight to e6 immediately, it's not so good. Black can defend it, but you see Stockfish 14 delayed this knight to e6 move for a while, improved first the pieces, and then when the time came, then it was simply time to occupy the e6 square. So as I said, this Bayonet Attack is really complex opening for white, for black, and I think I could have helped you out with this video, because I think we have seen really great tactical and strategical elements of this opening. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. If it was very interesting to see how Stockfish handles the King's Indian defense. If you want to see more brutal attacks like this, check out my commented chess games played by computers, with some great games played by Stockfish, LCZero, Leela Chess, and many more. And if you want to see humans battling it out in their best chess games, check out my best chess games of all time series with some great games from the past. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.